good evening, everybody, or good morning to some people who are watching from another part of the world. My name is Anita, and you're watching me on my channel Slate with Anita. Thank you so much for watching. If you have already watched some videos before, and right now I'm in conversation with Monica. If you have not seen Monica's videos in the last two episodes, guys, then I think you must stop watching this, go back there, watch them, then come back here. Because if we have been talking about children in the last two episodes, how can we leave parents behind? So that's why today I'm going to talk about parents with her. And when we discuss that, it's great that you experience both sides of the story, right? So let me not take any more of your time. And on that note, I would like to invite Monica once again. So, Monica, thank you so much for being on this channel. How are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome, Anita, and thank you for inviting me on this. Yeah.
You're welcome. And I must thank all the viewers out there because they have shown tremendous love to both Ashlesh and your videos. So all I can request is please do keep watching. It's us doing our tiny bit into this universe to spread word about this subject, which both of us, I feel, and I hope I can speak for both of us. This subject definitely has the potential to help create awareness in people and live the best life that they're capable of. Right, Monica?
Yeah, absolutely.
So today, like I was telling the viewers, we've spoken a little bit about how can NLP be used with children. We spoke about how movies can be one gateway to increasing the memory of kids and some more interesting aspects like that. So while viewers can, of course, enjoy and watch it in those videos, today from a parenting point of view, because in fact, Gayatri, why I speak about Gayatri is because Gayatri is someone who has worked very closely with you. And Gayatri put out this very heartwarming post recently, where she said, despite everything that you hear from everybody, parenting is not something one can ever be prepared with. So, how can we use NLP to make that journey a wee bit easier for our viewers out there?
So, what would you like me to?
So certain challenges that parents feel. I'm going to bucket it into three parts. One is
Okay.
the very early, like before maybe the kids are 5 or 6 years old, and then maybe 5 to 10, and then maybe the teens.
Okay.
Or maybe I'll take it the other way around, because one of the most things that the parents keep worrying about is my kid doesn't listen to me. I can't get through to my child.
Yeah.
And it's like I'm from planet A, he's from planet B, or she's from planet B. So yeah, so the parent-kid conflict,
Yeah.
arguably the most probably heart-wrenching conflict of all. So if we could talk a bit about that.
Sure. See, I don't have any practical experience of parenting myself, but I work a lot with parents, with quite a few parents, and even my students' parents come. So, from whatever I have an experience with them, and people who come to our practitioner program and masters and coach, I could share from there. Yeah,
absolutely.
So where would you like me to start with?
So have what instances have you observed, or what situations have parents brought up to you, or kids have brought up to you, where there is a very clear conflict?
Okay.
And maybe we talk about that a bit.
Okay. So they're different age groups, right?
Right.
So if I would you like me to start with early kids, or it's okay if it's random?
It's okay.
Okay. So, I have one parent who regularly keeps in touch. Okay. And the daughter has also been my, someone I've worked with. Okay, so the challenge, what happens to her is that, most of the time she has certain perspectives of what her daughter should be doing. Okay, and then she finds that she doesn't know how to communicate it, because this is a young adult, so her daughter is already about 21, 22.
Okay.
And so it's in that age, where even the daughter is a young adult, moving away from what probably how they used to be, much younger, a little younger, finding their own footing, right?
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So traditionally, the family is very orthodox, or I won't say orthodox or conservative, but more a different way of thinking from the way it is now. So traditional, more traditional. So they won't, have they've never seen their daughter or whatever having to talk to guys. Okay. Okay. So it's for them like they've grown up like in their days, that unless there was something that they had to ask us question or something, and or even only professionally, if they had to talk to the opposite sex, then they would do that. Talk to a male or anyone like that. Okay. And over here, whereas their daughter now, they're exposed, they're in a new different situation. So she does go and meet other people who are in the same field as her, and interacts, goes out and all that, and that's something they are not able to understand. And the daughter has now become a little rebellious.
Wow, that seems like a classic Indian.
Yeah. So generally, what I do suggest to the parent is to encourage them to just get the daughter's word. So what I do have conversations like, we say perceptual positions in NLP.
Right.
So just through conversations to get her to think of, okay, from daughter's point of view, how it is. What the daughter might be. It might not be in sync with the same values that the mother has taught or imbibed till now. But just to get an idea of where the daughter is. And to get her own perspective where she is, her world, and to step out and be able to observe both.
Okay. So that's a little interesting. Now let's say, so has she attempted doing that? Firstly, the parent.
Yeah. So through conversations, when I help her to take her through that, she was able to see, okay, how better she can handle it. What she saw was that she was being very emotional, and the way she would probably go and communicate to handle a particular situation that happened would probably escalate the whole situation.
Okay, so the way
if she addressed her daughter, because the daughter went somewhere with somebody and she wanted to address that, that would have escalated the solution if she, went with the emotion that she was feeling, like she felt it's wrong.
Right.
So I did get her to be aware of, okay, where is she coming from?
Okay.
What is the context? Like, okay, it's wrong, it shouldn't be done. So I said, okay, when we communicate from there, what will happen is the other person, or the child especially, will get where we're coming from.
Yeah. So I'm a little curious here. One is, of course, that so firstly, for viewers who are not from an NLP background, perceptual positions is where you basically have three positions which signify three viewpoints. The first position, which is my position, the second position, which is the other party's position with whom probably there's a conversation happening, and a third is an observer position, where from an observer or a third standpoint, you observe this interaction between yourself and the other party. So coming to what Monica is just sharing right now, I'm a little curious about how did the conversation look to her when she was observing it from a third point of view?
Yeah, so she does believe in God a lot. So one perspective we took was just a stranger. Who said, okay, like a stranger, and if they could see you and your daughter, how would the whole dynamics occur to them?
Right.
Okay, so there she said, yeah, okay, the mother is very concerned, and the daughter is finding her own stranger could see. Yeah, then I asked, okay, so as God, the God that they believe in, as God, from God's point of view, how do you look, and how does your daughter look? Okay. And what's really happening there? So from God's point of view, she got like, okay, she is, when I say she, the mother is having her journey and her lessons to learn, and the daughter is having her lessons to learn. And what is there is both. There is love in both. There's love, both love each other.
Right.
That's there. And that was what God could see, and God could. So I said, okay, what would God, from God's point of view, if God wanted to say something to the mother, what would God say? so God would, she said, I think God would just say, just believe that all the values and all that, your upbringing is there deep rooted in your daughter. And that will be her guiding force. And that will help her through it.
Wow.
And somewhere, I think she experienced some kind of relief. When she saw that point of view, the mother, when she saw from God's point, and when God said that, she got something like, something settled in. I saw her breathing shift. Wow. I could hear it. It was a phone call, so I could hear the breathing shift actually. Sure. And then I don't know, she took a moment and then she said, yeah, I will communicate, and I get now what I can do. And I left it at that, because it felt like something shifted, and she knew how to go about it.
Right.
Yeah, and the next day she messaged saying they had a nice dinner together and things were fine. And she didn't talk about it then, but later on, some days later, spoke about it, and very nicely told her daughter where she's coming from, her concerns. The daughter also expressed and said, I do understand. And so they had a conversation that started to open up something.
Wow. And to me that's so powerful, Monica, because and do let me know if I'm thinking in the right direction, because while this might be one example of let's say her mixing with the opposite gender, the fact is something like a perceptual positions can be very easily used by extrapolating this to career choices that maybe the kid wants to make and the parent doesn't agree with it. Or a behavioral, like I've seen parents who to me tell, we know it happens in this age, and we also had that shot of vodka when it was not yet the right time, and we also have tried a little bit of drugs, but we can't tell him that. And that's where, like, I feel like actually if one were to use perceptual positions, which is a thing about NLP, and then actually see the other person's point of view, and if you were to give the feeling that, hey, it's okay, and maybe the channel of communication will open up a lot more, because that itself creates that itself resolves a lot of things. What other instance have you observed in from a parenting point of view where you feel NLP has played a part?
See, the thing is, I don't know if it's NLP or what, but I can think about my own dad. I think he was an extremely open-minded person.
Okay.
So when I think of parenting, I think automatically my father came up just now. I remember, because of the teenage thing we're talking about, I was in the student organization called ISEC, and we were having an All India conference. And there were boys and girls and everything. We were coming, and I was the one who was organizing that whole feed. And what happened is, like, everybody came from all over, and from Bangalore, we were going to a resort in outskirts of Bangalore. So I had gone to organize some things, and I didn't know, but some of these guys got all this, booze and everything, and they put it in the bus. Okay, and I believe the police came and called and things, and the bus was very near to my house. Okay, and the thing is, I didn't know this till later, but I believe when I had gone, my dad came and helped out, and told the police and all that they're not going to do anything wrong and things and all that, and settled it and everything, and went back. And I had come back, and I didn't know we went to the meet, everything. I never knew all this happened, and my dad never even spoke about it.
Wow.
Okay, much later, a friend of mine told me this. Okay, this is what happened. Yeah, all this happened. And it's a very vivid memory of his, as a parent, the belief that he had in me.
Right.
Yeah, like he just knew the way he had brought up and the values, that he had so much trust.
Yes.
And that trust is something that I think from since my parents, like my father and my mother, who listened to me that way, I would be exposed with a lot of things. I would go with people who were if they drank or they went to different places, dancing, whatever it is. But it didn't shake me. I was the same person.
Right.
And I think a lot of it I owe to the way he would expose me to different things, allow me to think through things, and had immense faith in his ability.
Which is so important because I think especially people in the tier 2 cities, tier 3 cities, I don't even want to go to the Gurugrams of the world, but that faith of in our own parenting, because sometimes I find that belief not only not being there, but actually being on the other end of the spectrum. And to share a really deeply personal example, like my dad was orphaned pretty early. Like he was 3 and 5 when he lost his mom and dad respectively, and he grew up the hard way. So he literally today, in fact, when I was watching Patal Lok the other day, it's a series that has become very popular.
I haven't seen it here.
It's talks about the underbelly in the world in some form, and I realized that actually my dad had a pretty close to hard childhood. Now I realized that I don't know, I'm of course going on a limb and guessing a bit here, but that must have very deeply impacted his beliefs, because like I would probably put him on the other end of the spectrum in comparison to say someone like your dad, because I'll never forget talking about vivid memories. So there was our house had a veranda, okay, and I must have been 13, 14, and we had a shop diagonally opposite. And so there was this guy who used to come and hang around, okay. Now, incidentally, the guy used to have a crush on my neighbor. Okay. But my dad observed that guy for a few days, and one day I remember I came home a little late from school, and I entered and my dad gives me one foot slap. And I was like, what just happened? And of course, we are talking about times when forget awareness, NLP, anything. It's like you're just a confused teenager, and you have very different problems to resolve, like homework and bullying at school and so many other things. So it took me a lot of time to get over something like that, because I experienced a very harsh side of my dad for some years to come. And of course, now I know that it totally stemmed from him being overprotective, or him really, to sum it up, it would be the overprotective part. But I wish someone that day had told him the same thing, that believe in your parenting. Because like you rightly said, it's not that anything will shake me today, and then just because I'm in a place, not that it would affect me in any way. So the message that you are giving is very powerful indeed. So all you parents out there, while you're having your overprotectiveness take over you many times, the one thing to remember is faith. That's a big thing in yourself, in your own parenting, and because you have done your best. At least I truly would like to believe that for most part of the world. And secondly, that they must probably try perceptual positions, either through a professional's help or just literally.
Yeah, I think people do that naturally in different situations, right?
They do?
Yeah, like naturally. In relationships, if you look at it, when somebody is able to feel somebody's emotions, obviously they're stepping into the other person.
Yeah, but many times I see that the person is probably strengthening his own stance, and that's how they end up responding.
Okay. I guess some people have made that that flexibility where they do feel, especially coaches and people who are able to pick up, or therapists who are able to pick up somebody's emotions. So they do know how to step into the other person's world and their world. And a lot of people like Vishwanath Anand, in one of his interviews, I think Ashlesh shares this a lot in the program. He was talking about how he would actually play out chess. So he would always see his moves, then he would see his opponent moves, and he would be able to see the outside and then take a decision on his moves. So some people naturally develop this skill, and some may be doing it in some areas and in some relationships.
Right.
Okay, like something, sometimes with our own family members, we may get triggered, right?
Right, of course.
Yeah, but then sometimes the same reaction, it's there at office or with someone else, we may not have the same response.
Yes.
So definitely, we probably are seeing it from a different point of view.
Right. We are, except that I've heard parents too many times literally speaking these words that, okay, I don't want to know what you're saying. Just do this, or just be this, or just wear this. And I feel like maybe as an adult, we don't cherish that. The kids, especially when they're growing up, they don't cherish that. So any help on how could the kids look at the parents, or they also go ahead and practice?
Yes.
Because it's a little hard, when you're young and like it's your.
Yeah, I guess now a lot of parenting seems to have changed, Anita, from what I'm seeing. Because earlier I think that whole thing wasn't there. It was a different way of parenting. Like, I say this, do this, and things like that. Yeah. Now I see a lot of parents talking to their children as a friend.
Yes, thankfully.
But of course, I guess that also has one thing, that if you get too much like a friend, it's important that the child also knows you're a parent.
Right.
Yeah, because then
balance is.
Yeah, so you could be a parent who's a friend too, but not that they also know, because there are certain roles as a parent, right?
True.
And certain things.
So one question that I had was specifically, many schools of thought always lead things back to childhood. Okay, that you can trace it back somewhere to childhood, and which clearly means that in childhood, if let's say a child is going through something, and be it trauma of maybe abuse of a kind, or be it even simple things where somebody's stimulus is like wiring something deeply, or hurting something deeply. So what can parents do? And I know it's not just about NLP, but what can parents try out so that they can, especially of parents who are kids, who are still say less than 15 years old, what could they try out so that the child trusts the parent enough to share everything or have conversations?
I think what's important is building rapport, like the relationship.
Okay.
That we deeply connect with somebody. So even as a parent, I see parents who, they connect with their child, they spend time, they communicate, they talk to their child. Okay, a lot of things is, I think a lot of us in general may not know how to talk. We say things, okay, but when we say talk, it's about actually sitting across and both people are able to express what they feel, what their thoughts are. And, we're able to listen to that. So as parents, if parents are able to listen to what's happening with their child, it doesn't mean they're agreeing to everything. Okay, but just that there's a safe space where the child can share. And the child knows the parent is going to share and not going to react or any of that. Okay, that safe space, then what happens is it becomes an automatic thing to naturally share.
Right.
Yeah, because I remember from my own past, like with my dad especially, more than my mom, with my dad, I could never ever hide anything. I would never do. So even when I met Ashlesh and I realized we both realized we like each other, even before I dated or said thing, I went and told my dad, see, there's this person and I like him and this and that. So my dad said, okay, and he said, what's his name? He wrote down his name. And then he said, okay, keep physical distance. And that's it. And then after that, only when I started dating. So the thing is, it was just that I would never do anything without it, and that happened because he kept that safe space to share. and for me, the reason I'm sharing this is because as an NLPer now, I understand all the things that he did.
Yes.
Because in NLP, we do understand what helps in parenting and thing, right? It's nothing but what people naturally do who are parenting in a way that's useful or healthy for their child.
Yeah.
So I think that really helped.
Sure. So as a like a parting question before we move to some other things, what can parents do? Although I agree it's changing to some extent, but there are these still deep rooted things, right, which as parents, people I see people going through, including what you mentioned. There is this strong association with their child getting physical, as say post-teens or like the young adult stage. So that's symbolic of a lot of things, especially with girls. I mean, it's like borderline. Like there are literally threats and warnings in very creative ways that are given just to ensure that the child doesn't do function a certain way. So is there anything that parents can do to?
So since we moved from the little kids to older, so if you don't mind, can I go back to the little kids? And
yes, please. Yeah.
It's just that from different stages, because people may be having children at different ages, right?
Right.
Okay, so young kids, like, when they're really young, what's important is that there's a safe space for them to share.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that they can talk about anything, even if the teacher screamed, shouted, or I felt bad, this one said this, or I hit or whatever it is. Okay, and it doesn't mean that the parent can't guide them, but then it's just that once they're able to express, then they can move them. They can actually help them think. Okay, what's important is to ask children some questions. And what I found is, like, when you ask children questions, like, do you think this was useful? What do you think next you could have done differently? And next time if something like this happens, what can you do different? How can you respond differently? So what happens is you're also future pacing, that next time in a similar situation, the child has a different response or has a different way of dealing with it.
A more useful outcome-based approach.
So very important to ask questions that are useful, so that helps them to think, and also helps them to create what they can do differently next time.
Right.
Okay, and that can become automatic pattern because they've already thought it. Just like we say when we imagine something and our nervous system feels it, then it becomes an automatic pattern, right?
Yeah. But that's for the child. I'm saying what happens to the parents? Like
so your question was what the parents can do, right?
What parents can do for themselves. For
themselves. Okay, you want it for themselves, not for the child.
No, although this was helpful because because again what you're saying, and viewers, I hope you're paying attention here, because particularly Indian parenting is a lot about telling, or has been about telling. In fact, I think in our system, parents can literally tell till very advanced ages. So whereas here you're saying that the telling probably has to be replaced with asking a lot of questions, because that's how you're able to program their own independent thinking to be able to take better calls for themselves.
Yeah, like ask questions to understand what's happening, and then also to be able to help them think through whatever it is there, and to also think of future things like that.
But how do the parents resolve things within themselves?
Okay.
Like they are also responding because of ABC reasons, right? As parents, because not every parent might attend a NLP course or do something with regards to self-awareness. Is there something that parents can do?
Yeah, I think maybe ask a simple question to oneself, like, what do I really want for my child? What do I really, really want? Yeah. So when any parent or anyone asks this, then it gets clearer for them, what do they really want?
Yeah.
And how do I want to respond?
Yeah.
The same thing, like suppose I want them to be disciplined. One way is that I could shout and scream and things like that. Or the other thing is there another way that I can do which will also communicate and help the child and at the same time move towards what I want?
Okay, that's pretty interesting.
Just the outcome, what do I want for my child?
Yeah.
And who do I want to be as a parent?
Right.
Who do I want to be? Do I want to be a strict mom or a strict dad? Do I want to be, somebody who's loving, caring, at the same time firm when it needs to be? Who do I really want to be? How do I want to play this role as a parent?
Right. Strange, because when we apply for interviews, we always insist on the job description. But I think when let's say people are becoming parents, then probably that much focus is not given on themselves to ask themselves, okay, what is my ideal job description as a parent that I would like to probably live by?
Yeah.
And that makes sense. That's so much of sense, Monica. I hope the viewers are also able to take the subtle things in communication, because if a parent were to ask, what do I really, really want for my child, is very different from, okay, what do I want? What do I want needs to happen, as in that the child should listen to me. Okay, or that the child has to obey me. Now, these are also things that the parents can want. Yeah. Whereas if the parent were to change that and ask themselves, okay, what do I really want from this situation and for my child? Maybe the answers that they get for themselves will be very different.
Yeah, just that they're clear of, what they want.
Yeah.
Because otherwise one could get lost as, with a lot of things that parents have to deal with and do. Yes. Right? Because from morning they have different schedules and different things and roles to play and responsibilities. So just getting clear, and each day maybe like a routine, because what happens is any routine helps. So just as a morning, routine, to just think of, okay, today who do I want to be as a mother? Or who do I want to be as a father?
Right.
And how would I like today to be with my child? Like what kind of space and what would I like to create? Or from where do I want to come from? Do I want to come from love? Do I want to come from, having fun, joy, happiness? So the thing is, these can become our guiding things for the day.
Wow, yeah.
And after sometimes it becomes a conditioning, because when we're thinking something, or as a parent somebody's thinking, what I see is automatically that is there for them, that purpose is there.
Yes. And that could influence the way they respond to the situations that happen later on.
Yeah.
During the day. So one last question for today, before I bring you back again for something more interesting. So yesterday I was having this very interesting conversation with a group of NLP participants. We have this group, and one person is incidentally parent to a very 1-year-old kid.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently the parent said, don't touch the soap. Okay, because a child was about to eat the soap.
Yeah. So how to instruct the child, right?
Yeah, how to instruct
the language. Yeah.
Language, and not just that. What happened? What he shared about it was very interesting, and I wanted to get your thoughts on that. So he said that, okay, I told the child, and child is 1 year, that don't take the soap. Okay. Apparently the child obeyed. And what this parent shared was that I realized that momentarily I was on a high, that my child listens to me. At the same time, I checked myself, because that's not the objective. So what I actually want, and that I remembered this because you spoke about parents asking themselves this question, because he said, what I really want for my child is that he has his own experiences. And yes, while I might want to keep him in check when there is a safety element, but otherwise, I don't want to get into the trap of authority, the feeling of authority that I got momentarily when my child obeyed. And I was a little surprised that he shared that, because he said, maybe this is what tomorrow someday will make me feel when he doesn't listen, that, oh, he's becoming rebellious. You know what I mean? Yeah. Whereas today itself, if I'm checking myself and I'm taking the call, that no, it's going to be your experience along the way. I'm just going to stand by. And I somehow felt that this is a situation where conflicts will be much better dealt with little later in the day.
Hmm.
Your thoughts.
No, perfectly from what you're sharing. Yeah. And just a little bit, since you brought up the word don't, okay, it's a
Yeah.
little different from this, but when we say in NLP, we say when we say don't worry or don't think of the pink elephant. Okay, so what comes to our mind is the pink elephant, right?
Yes, you will think that. Yes.
Yeah. So what we say is our unconscious mind doesn't, process don't. Okay, so it creates the picture of what is there after don't.
Yeah.
Okay, so sometimes you see for parents telling little kids, don't spill the milk. Don't spill the milk. And what happens is the child unconsciously spills the milk.
Yes.
So what happens is actually this picture in their mind would be spilling milk, because don't is not processed. We don't have a representation of don't in the picture in our mind.
Right.
Okay, so when you say don't, okay, so now if I say don't think of a pink panther, what comes to your mind?
Yeah, Pink Panther. I'm like,
yeah, so that's why what helps is the way we use language. Like instead of saying don't spill the milk, to say what we want. Yeah, like hold the cup usefully.
Yeah. And
yeah, you're giving direction. Yeah.
I actually realize it's pretty hard because it's almost second nature to say don't.
Yeah, so if we can say don't, and then if we want to make the change, we can say, okay, don't worry and be relaxed.
Okay, as a start for saying.
Yeah, so it's okay to say don't, but to give direction to our way. So if you're saying don't and it's a habit, then what we can do is add, okay, what we want, and it helps children, And another part that I actually think a very important thing is like, when somebody does something not useful, like a child doesn't do something useful.
Excuse me.
Okay, like so what happens is sometimes we link it to the identity, like we say good boy and bad boy, right? So if someone does something like a little boy went and boxed his friend, then we'll say you're a bad boy. Yeah, sometimes we may have heard parents say you're a bad boy, right?
Yes,
so what happens is this boxing, the action or the behavior gets linked to the identity of bad boy. Okay, and so then what happens is they start thinking of themselves as bad boy. And since when they think of bad boy, there's an emotion and not necessarily this behavior need change. So usually when it's not useful behavior, it's useful not to link it to an identity or make it an identity, but just address the behavior. Like talk about, there was boxing. So what was the boxing? So just about the behavior.
Okay. So you're saying ask probing rather than say, you've been a bad boy, you're getting into fights.
Yeah, so what we're doing is we're linking the behavior of boxing or whatever to bad boy. Okay, that means they're a bad boy. So it becomes synonymous to them. Like, they become bad boy. Okay, so useful, anything not useful, not to have an identity or thing linked with it, but just to talk about the behavior.
Right, just the boxing.
No matter what, they're a good boy or good girl or whatever, but it's just the behaviors, so that then it doesn't become a part of them. See, even for anybody, okay, if somebody is saying something as a behavior, they just say, hey, you didn't speak well, which is still okay, but if they say, you're not a good speaker.
Correct. That messes with us.
Yeah, so because it's at the identity level.
Yes.
Okay, but when you say about the action or something, and also what happens is that's something someone can change. A behavior is something someone can change. So a child can change, and to just keep that. But if it's something useful, okay, now like suppose this child studied really well, then you can say, oh, you really studied well, you're an awesome child, or you're an intelligent child. That's okay, because it's building the self-esteem.
Okay.
So something useful behavior, linking it with the identity helps.
Okay. Interestingly, although when you study mindset, like Carol Dweck's growth mindset, she advocates focusing on the process in both cases.
Okay.
Yeah, And whereas I see NLP, the identity element, only taking it further in case of a good situation.
Yeah, so the process, it could be useful to have both this process, but what also happens as human beings or as children, an important part is also to have evidence for self-esteem, to build a self-esteem and who they are.
Yes.
Okay, so sometimes these labels help people to build their identity and who they are.
Yes.
Okay, so from that perspective, but yeah, from what you're saying, that's also a thing that, okay, process would help one to build it, whether it's a useful behavior or thing or from.
Like I know you're a great NLP trainer because you do so many programs day in and day out, and you coach so many people.
No, I don't really do much NLP trainings.
I mean as a
I'm saying for the others. Yeah.
To the kid, if I were to say, then it's not about just saying that you're great at this, but also back it up with what's helping.
Evidence. Yeah, evidence. Yeah, evidence. Yeah.
Awesome, that makes sense. I think the parents have got quite a lot today. To begin with, the faith that they must have in their own parenting. So please, parents, trust yourself a little bit more and also going to be well. Secondly, try and use perceptual positions, which some of you may be naturally doing, but maybe do it even more consciously, especially when conversations are not going the way you want them to. And then, of course, Monica, you also spoke about how probably eliminating the word or using the word don't judiciously, so that we are also able to make them behave in a useful way. So don't say don't spill milk or don't do this, don't do that. Rather say, okay, don't spill milk, just hold the cup properly. And that can play its part in bringing up more healthy individuals. And last but not the least, Monica, you spoke about a very important thing, which is to not equate behaviors with identities, because it's quite easy to bring about changes, influence changes at the behavior level, whereas you could leave deep lasting effects if you take it to the identity level. So
yeah, that's if it's a not
a useful way. And of course, please practice everything that is good, and that, because that can't do any harm, is how I would probably look at it. So
yeah, because I do believe that part of the useful things getting anchored can be thing to an identity, can be a powerful thing. Because I myself, as a childhood experience, my dad had this thing, every time I did well in school or anything, I would go and sit on his lap, and then he would sit and tap on me and say, you're a genius and you're $1 million and all that. Okay, and that was such a powerful anchor. Anytime I was at any time not feeling too good or felt didn't have faith, immediately that would trigger. Even today it triggers, it's such a powerful thing, anchor for me. So I think him saying that you're a genius, you're a thing, that belief is there.
Yes.
Okay, so I think it helped as a powerful anchor, when we do.
Yeah. Awesome. I mean,
so it's a resource within, right? That anytime we, it's there for us.
Absolutely. And that's in fact, even on a parting shot, that's an extremely helpful tip. Because while you were saying that, Monica, I suddenly remember that my dad always used to say, he would just do that. Like, he was a man of few words. He would speak very less. But I remember like a lot of times when I would do well and he would just do that. Yeah. And I would be like, yeah, I've done something like really.
Yeah. You still remember that, right?
I remember that, absolutely.
Yeah.
Not only do I remember that, I see him doing that even today. Like when I feel like, or I want to feel good about something, and I just imagine that he's standing and he's doing.
Wow.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Monica, for giving such helpful tips on parenting. And while we do know that thankfully things are shifting a little bit, there are still a lot of parents who do take things a little traditional way, albeit very well-meaningly. So thank you so much for your time today, and we'll bring you back with something even more exciting.
Yeah.
Okay, so what you're saying is, okay, so let me just come back here. So you were saying that you would have liked to also talk about how parents can manage the emotions of their kids, is it?
Yeah, help them to get into useful states like emotion.
Tell me more.
Yeah, just the thing is, we say when somebody changes their mood, everything changes, right? Yeah, so this, even with children, what we say is like, especially even when I work with children,
Right.
or when I tell parents, we do in different ways to help children be accessing different moods, like good moods. When fun, like when they're playing, or they're exposed to music, or they're exposed, but in different ways, where they're seeing that the child is mostly their day is with different useful emotions.
Okay, so
when people are in useful emotions, their children usually will operate differently.
So what can they do? Like, what can they do to, say, kickstart their child's emotions in the right way?
Yeah, just to see what are the things that the child enjoys, encourage them in that. Yeah, and yeah, like reinforcement, like, when we say things like, oh wow, awesome. So what's happening is they're in different useful emotional states, right? And
Yes.
if the whole day they're feeling good, useful emotional states, once in a way they may feel here and there low, but roughly the quality of life and what life occurs for them will be very different.
Okay, so in today's time and age, if we were to let us say take an example of a 10 to 12-year-old kid, many times kids have cell phones, So is it the idea for parents to kind of be in touch and give that positive booster?
Yeah, it could be any time, It's just that if they have an idea of what emotional states, because now what we're seeing is sometimes children go into, they're feeling low, they're feeling sad, they're getting angry, irritated, and small things, and then predominantly that becomes a habit after some time.
Okay.
Then when they're trying to change it at teenage, then it's become a strong pattern.
Correct.
Whereas it started at small children, but that time parents may not have noticed it as much, or said, okay, it'll pass.
Yeah.
But it makes sense that, we just break that, like in a way that, just if we see every day children are in good mood. Because a lot of children, when they come, when they're having trouble with behavior problems in school or different things, they're not feeling good and all. One important thing that we do is that they can get access good emotional states. It could be like, okay, they're doing some fun activity, we do fun activity, then play with them. Parents play with them, sing with them, dance with them, do different things. And there's a lot of emotional state. And even if you're not doing, but the child is, in things that they're also enjoying.
Yes.
And having fun.
And how can parents probably help them change the state if let's say they seem like a little disturbed, and of course I'm sure you'll probably, it's time to get into a conversation, right?
Yeah, you could always talk to them about how they're feeling and all, so that they can express, and at the same time get them to like, okay, would you like to hear your favorite music?
Yeah.
Simple things,
or play a favorite.
Yeah. Would you like to go play? Would you like to, even sometimes physical movement helps us to move out of it, no?
Yeah.
So any kind of movement, like physical movement, like do juggling, do whatever they like, but if they can just help them to shift. So after some time, the child will know how to also. Initially, the parent is helping them.
Yeah.
But after some time, that will become their automatic thing, that when they see themselves going sad, before they spiral and go too deep, they'll do something like they'll move their body, or they'll start. They'll automatically go to putting on music that they enjoy. Okay, so that will become their automatic things.
Right.
Which some children do, and some we as adults do, because we learned that.
Correct. Yeah, that is very useful stuff. I think I'm parting shot, and I'm going to put this parting shot in the video as well, because
it's recording. I thought it's not recording.
It's recording because it's a useful thing, and so if we are just a little observant about what's happening with our kids, Monika told a very important thing with regards to managing the emotions of the child, and to constantly do our bit in keeping them in useful emotional states, so that first you're playing a part, and then it becomes their automatic way of functioning.
Yeah, sometimes you just tease the child, okay, but what's happened is you have just rattled that state if it's not useful. Once the structure is changed, then it'll occur differently, right? We say any experience has a structure.
Yes.
Once it's changed, so anything,
Yeah. Anything you want to add on the managing the emotions bit? Because clearly this was useful, because this again something and even I missed it, because parents do struggle with how to manage the emotions of the kid.
Yeah. One is like different music, playing things that are useful. It could be even giving hi-fi, small things.
And also these become interesting rituals.
Yeah. Sometimes, there may be times, like my sister-in-law does that with me also sometimes. She calls me Chichi girl.
Okay.
Yes. And the thing is, sometimes I may be like in deep thought, and then she say Chichi girl, and then I can, just the way she says it, I will be in a different state.
Yeah.
So like even, as parents, when parents would just say, okay, child may be going through something, but you just go and do a hi-fi, or you do anything that will make them.
What's a buddy, and kind of.
Yeah, any small shift,
Yeah. And strangely, these things are remarkably simple.
Yes.
And so rather than the parent maybe choosing to brood over, okay, is something happening with my child? How do I get through? These are just very remarkable things, techniques that one can try out and change the
situation. And this is gradually not make it dependent on the parent, because parent won't be there. But something like, what, they could read a book they like, they could, start hearing music, do some dancing, or do some sport, or do anything that they would like when they're not in a useful thing, or any kind of movement.
So you nudge them towards what they enjoy.
Yeah. And that would become later on a pattern.
Right.
That they would do it unconsciously. Not feeling a good mood, they won't stay in it for long.
Yeah.
One will just, okay, let me do something else. Maybe I'll cook or bake.
Yeah.
So,
yes, parents, while I know all of you must be wanting to pack your child's life with a lot of classes and learnings, these simple nudges may actually help your child become a very, very resourceful, self-sufficient adult. So do keep at it. And yes, thank you, Monica, for sharing that. And yes, thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks, Anita. Thank you so much.
Thank you, viewers, for watching yet another episode of Mastering It with Monica. I really hope you are taking your journey about mastering it with her in the areas of children and parenting. Next week, I'll come up with something even more exciting with her, so you don't go anywhere, and please keep watching. Show some love. Last I checked, sharing is still caring. So like, subscribe, share with as many parents and kids as you know who can comprehend this. On that note, thank you so much. Stay safe, and I'll see you back soon. Bye.